So you just got your Raspberry Pi and you have no idea how to install any software on it. Well, no worries. In this video, we'll go through step by step everything you need to do to install Ubuntu 20.04 onto your Raspberry Pi without needing a monitor. So let's jump right into it. Before we do anything with the Pi itself, the first piece of software we want to download is Etcher. And Etcher is just the piece of software that writes the Ubuntu image itself onto our SD card for our Raspberry Pi. So after navigating out to balena.io/etcher, you'll see the page just as you do now, and you'll be able to click on the downloads for window. Once that's downloaded, we're going to go ahead and install it. So let's click on that, we'll install it. And this is a pretty basic install. You're just going to click run, and then I agree to the terms and conditions, because of course we always agree to those. And then once this is installed, it will open up automatically. From here we can see that we can select any sort of file to write to an SD card. If you have a Ubuntu already, perfect, you can go ahead and do this process. Otherwise, let's go out to ubuntu.com/download/Raspberry Pi, where we can actually download the Ubuntu 20.04 software. Now it is important to note which version of the Raspberry Pi you have. Only the Raspberry Pi 4 with the 4GB or 8GB RAM size can download the 64-bit version. Otherwise you will have to use the 32-bit. Since I am using the Raspberry Pi 4 8GB, I'm going to download the 64-bit version. But either way, whichever one you choose, the instructions are going to be the same from here on out. Now Ubuntu might take a little bit to download, and so while it's downloading, we can actually take our SD card and get it fitted into our computer so that we can actually use Etcher to write to it. Once Ubuntu finished downloading, we can go back to our Etcher program and we can search for that file that we just downloaded, which will be right in your downloads folder. Next step will be to search for the SD card that we just put in the computer. Mine already has mine selected, but if yours doesn't show up, you can always click on it and you should be able to see it here, select it, and flash. And there you go. Congratulations. Once this is done, you have successfully installed Ubuntu on a Raspberry Pi. Now, before we get into too much more, I do want to go through the portion that we're going to set up so that we can connect to it through SSH without using a monitor. This is really nice, so you don't have to keep plugging in all the different keyboards and mice. So first thing that we're going to do is SD card where we just flashed all of our Ubuntu files, and we're going to open up the network config file into any sort of notepad, any text editor really. And what we're going to do here is actually just modify the Wi-Fi settings. This is going to allow the Raspberry Pi to boot up and connect to the Wi-Fi right off the bat. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove all of those octothorpes, or hashtags for you younger kids, and then remove these highlighted lines here, as we only need one access point to connect to. At this point, we can update the My Home Wi-Fi to your actual name of your Wi-Fi, and the password inside the quotes to your password. Now, one thing I do want to point out that I found out, which is not shown in the video, is your Wi-Fi name should be wrapped in quotes as well. With that done, you can go ahead and save that file and close it. And the next one we want to look at is user data. We're going to do the same thing where we right click on it, open it into a notepad or any sort of text editor. And all we're doing here is just verifying that these lines look exactly the same and are set to true. If they both are, you can just close the file, no changes needed. Now, although we are done with the SD card, we are not going to put it into the Pi yet. First, we need to be able to find the IP address that gets assigned to the Pi when we first boot it up. So we're going to come out and use this advanced IP scanner and download this. This is going to allow us to see what IP address is being used for the Raspberry Pi. So once you download it, go ahead and install it. Again, we're going to need to accept the terms and agreements. But once this is done, it's a quick one, then we can actually run it and we'll be able to scan to see what IP addresses we already have on our Wi-Fi. Now you want to make sure that the Wi-Fi that you're scanning is the same Wi-Fi that your Raspberry Pi will be on, but as we can see here, I have 4 of them right now that are connected to my Wi-Fi. Now we're ready to actually set up our Pi for the first time boot. I'm using this bottom half of the plastic casing that came with my Pi, just so I don't have it sitting on the bare table. So now we can take the SD card and we can put it into the Pi, and that's going to be on the bottom side of the Pi, and that's going to be for all of the Pis. Now you can grab your power supply that either came with your Raspberry Pi kit or any USB-C USB that you have, as long as it has 2.4 amps. And then you can turn it on. Once it's on, you should see some flashing green lights, and when you do, that's great. We can hop back over to our IP scanner and rescan. Now right away we can see we already have more of these IP addresses, like the 1.14 there, and that's great because now we know which one we're going to use for our Ubuntu, and we need that so that we can connect through our SSH terminal to the Pi remotely. And to do that, we're going to go download the last piece of software that we need, which is PuTTY. Now there are a lot of different SSH terminals out there. I'm using PuTTY here. You can use whatever you want, but you can download it here and you can grab the 64-bit version since I'm just doing this on my desktop. And again, we're going to download and install this and agree to any terms and conditions that may apply. Now PuTTY does not open automatically once it's done downloading, so we'll have to open it manually. And if you're not familiar with PuTTY shells or any SSH shell, all you really need to see here is the host name and the IP address box. We're going to take the IP address that we found from our IP scanner and just type it into this box and leave all other settings as is and go ahead and click open. This is going to pop up and all this is saying is, hey, I'm going to save an SSH key. No problem, hit yes. And now it's going to ask you to log in to the Ubuntu Pi. Login is Ubuntu, password is also Ubuntu. So you can go ahead and type those in, hit enter. As soon as it logs in, it's going to immediately say that the password is expired. And so you're going to have to change it by typing in the current password again, and then a new password, anything you want here, and you then retype it again. Once you do that, it automatically shuts it down and kind of logs you out. So you got to open up PuTTY again and do the exact same thing. Type in the same IP address again and hit open. Again, it's going to ask you to log in with a username and password. The username stays the same, it's Ubuntu, but the password will be whatever you just changed it to. And there you go. We are inside of the Ubuntu on the Pi without using any monitors, and that's awesome. Now, we're not 100% done yet, right? We still want to set up Ubuntu and make sure that it is ready to be used. There are still some packages that we might want to install and upgrade. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. The first command that we're going to run is just a simple ping google.com. And all we're doing here is just verifying that our Wi-Fi is actually connected to the internet. We're seeing that we're actually getting packets coming through, so everything checks out. Awesome. You can hit Control-C at any time to cancel this. The next command that we're going to run here, and if I zoom out, we can see that my dates do not line up. So we're going to want to fix that. And we can do that by running the code sudo apt install http date. As soon as that's done, let's just run the date command again and see what it looks like. Great, the date's good, but my time is still off. So the first thing that I want to do here is we're going to run a command that'll tell us all the different time zones, and that is time-date-ctl list-time zones. And this is going to list all of the different time zones. So you can scroll through here with your down arrow until you find your time zone. Mine is the Chicago zone. And then at any point, Control-C will close out of that and bring you back to the prompt. Now we can run our command that actually sets the time zone. So again, time-date-ctl set-time zone America/Chicago, or substitute in whatever you need for your time zone. As a note, you do need to make sure that you are spelling everything correctly, because that makes a difference. And then you also need to make sure that your casing is exactly correct. Once that is acceptable, it will ask you to type in your password again. Go ahead and do so, and then you'll see the authentication complete. You can run the date command, and you can see here my date is set correctly now. So I'm just going to clear the screen, and we're going to move on to the next code, which is really just going to be a update for all packages within Ubuntu. So we're going to run a sudo apt update, and that is going to be followed by a sudo apt upgrade to upgrade all of the packages up. After running that command, you may be prompted to continue. Go ahead and hit yes. That's just confirming that you do actually want to upgrade these packages. The last two commands that we're going to do is just some cleanup. So we're going to do sudo apt auto remove, which will just remove any of the older packages. And once that's done, then we're just going to reboot, sudo reboot. That will disconnect you from your SSH. No worries, we can just close that, reopen it after we give it a minute, let that Pi reboot, and then we can SSH back into it And there you go. You have Ubuntu set up and ready to go for anything that you want to use it for. So thanks for watching. I hope this helped you. If you guys are looking for more Raspberry Pi info, stay tuned. I do plan on upgrading this Raspberry Pi to soon host my .NET 5 web application. So if you're looking at doing something very similar, hit that subscribe button. I will have videos coming out of how to do that, and I'm going to try to continue to keep taking this further and hopefully soon build my own cluster of Raspberry Pis. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and until next time, see ya.